Good morning, and welcome to Rio2 Limited Quarter 2 conference call. With us today is Alex Black, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the company. Mr. Black, please begin.
Okay, thanks everybody for joining. This is a bit of a trial by us to see how this all goes. Typically, as everybody knows, you know, companies put out quarterlies. They regurgitate or do a flash presentation about what they just announced the day before or a few days before. And there's very little interaction from shareholders apart from some analysts asking questions, etc. And we've decided we don't want to regurgitate numbers. We've been quite explicit in the way that we've put out our quarterly numbers with an update as well, to put everything out there as far as how we're progressing and where things are going and how we're performing. So really, this is just a casual discussion and an ability for anybody and everybody to ask questions either via text or verbally. And you know, we like to be as open as possible. There's no judgment. If you're a retail investor and own 1,000 shares, but you've got a question that's burning a hole in your brain about what you want to ask us, please go ahead and ask us. As you know, I deal with emails a lot. I put my email address out there. It's in the press releases. People do communicate with me by email, and I do answer those emails. So, I try and communicate with people as best as possible. We do interviews, but unfortunately, those interviews are not interactive. This is one way of getting over that by having some sort of interaction with investors. So please feel free to ask questions. I can see now on my screen already three text questions have come through, so that's good. We'll attend to them. We'll also attend to people who raise their hands to ask questions as well. So it's a very open forum and very relaxed. Okay. So I'll start off and kick off by saying we have here four of us from Rio2. There's myself, I'm the Executive Chairman. Mariano Alarco, he's the Director of Operational Excellence. Andrew Cox, President CEO, and Catherine Johnson, who's our CFO. Mariano, myself, and Andrew are in Lima, in Peru, and Catherine's in Vancouver on this call. So the thing I want to do is just open up with the fact that we did put out our quarter. You can see that our quarter, from a numbers perspective, was an improvement on the first quarter that we put out this year. We've only reported 2 quarters from both Condestable and Phoenix Gold. As you know, Condestable was an acquisition that we made in January, or closed in January. It's been under our belt for 5 months and is doing very well on a steady state basis. Phoenix Gold's in ramp up, and we've been as explicit as possible about all the challenges that we've gone through in respect to ramp up. So the key issues that we identified in Q1 were in regards to recruitment of people. We are over that hump now, and we reported that in our Q2 results. Mining space, Phoenix South taking off the peaks, and you can see the deposit here. There's Phoenix South there, Phoenix Central, and Phoenix North. Extinct volcano, virtually at close to 5,000 meters above sea level. So making space to generate a pit with working areas, etc., was a challenge in Q1, and that's starting to we're starting to get over that. We reported on fragmentation. We said that there was some andesitic material, which is hard material in relation to the brecciated volcanics. It's about 30% of what we're mining at the moment is breaking to oversize. Oversize being greater than 4 inches, and we talked about the fact that we're dealing with our explosive contractor and looking at trying to optimize that and reduce the fragmentation on that harder material. Throughput, you know, we are aiming to get to a steady state of 20,000 tons a day. With throughput, we were hitting our straps in early July, and we were actually feeling quite confident that we could declare that we were at a steady state of more than 20,000 tons a day during Q3, but that appears not to be the case because of the extreme weather events that we've been through, and we're going to talk more about that. Andrew's going to show some photos as to what we're dealing with at Phoenix Gold with regards to weather. So, you know, we've lost some time in production at Phoenix Gold during these weather events. No damage, no safety issues. We've looked after our people, but getting ore onto the pad has been problematic from the point of view of working safely and having people available at site to do that. And so right now, it looks like we've lost about 2 weeks of production during July, and it looks like we're going to lose about 2 weeks again in August because of the weather. Once again, Andrew will talk more about that in a minute. So I'll just hand over to Andrew to go through that. I think we'll look at what we're dealing with, have a look at some photos on both Phoenix Gold and Condestable, and then deal with the questions. I now have about 5 written messages or questions presented here, so we'll get through those as quickly as possible after Andrew does the presentation. Andrew?
Yep.
I don't know if you want to talk more about some of the things that I just brought up, but
sure. Just bear with me for a second while I pull up the file. Okay, can you see that, Alex?
Yeah, it's starting to come up. It's just loading now.
Just let me know.
Yep, there it is. Yep. Phoenix South.
Okay, so this is a photo of Phoenix South in better times when it's not buried in snow so much. This was taken early August before the second storm event. So we had the July storm event, 16th of July, that basically shut us down for almost 2 weeks effectively of production. And then as at the time of publication of the press release, we went into a second event, which was worse than the July one. We had almost 3 times as much snow, and we're still opening up access again to the project. And
Andrew, do you want to just elaborate on what the average precipitation is in the region?
So Phoenix Gold typically receives 15 centimeters of precipitation a year, which generally is in the form of small snowfalls, 3 to 4 snow events a year of maybe 5 centimeters. In the July event, we had close to half a meter of snow of everything, and then in the second event in August, which we're coming out of now or dealing with now, we've had over a meter across the project, and in some places up to 3 meters where the winds accumulated snow. So very atypical, and basically 2 10-year events in 3 weeks is what we've lived through. So tough dealing with cleaning up all the snow to get access to everything again. It's the hard part. The leach pad, for example, you'll see in the photos is covered in a couple of meters of snow at the moment. So while we re-establish access to Phoenix South, at the same time we have to clean the leach pad so we can start depositing material. So if you're looking at Phoenix South there on the screen, you can see it's opened up. We've got 2 or 3 different mining areas where we can mine. As Alex mentioned, in July we were achieving 20,000 tons a day before we had to stop for the storm. So we were well on track to achieve that, and we expect to get back to that once we start mining again. Some of the issues from Q1 we reported, we were working with contracted hired trucks while we were waiting for the owned fleet, the fleet that was purchased by our contractor for the project. You can see there that the Scania trucks, 42-ton capacity, they arrived, they're on site, they arrived during Q2, and at the start of Q3 we had the full fleet of trucks on site, which solved one of our problems, which was availability. That the operators, as Alex mentioned, was resolved, that wasn't an issue into Q3. And also the excavators, you can see on the right, there's two 90-ton cat excavators, which also arrived during Q2. So from a mining fleet perspective, everything's on site, the drills, the trucks, the diggers. So that's not a restriction anymore. When we talked about the andesite, dacite material, you can see on the right-hand side of the photo, the breccias, the volcanic breccias blast very well. The finer material, you can see the brown. And to the left, behind the truck over here, you can see the andesite, dacite material, which is obviously much harder, and we've been having some issues with oversized material that we mentioned in the press release that Alex talked about. Working with our blasting contractor to try and improve blasting, change the pattern, change the loading, powder factor, etc. The detonation method with double detonator. So we're working on that and improving it. But you can see the difference in the grain size or the fragmentation in that photo. This is basically after the first event. You can see that there wasn't that much snow deposited on the leach pad. But what I'm trying to show in this photo here are the black plastic covers that we talked about in the press release. You can see down in the lower left foreground the black covers over the pad, that they've worked very well for us. The insert photo shows basically the ambient temperature outside the pad and then inside the pad, which is basically a difference of 12 degrees. So using those covers keeps temperature in the pad, and we were able to combat the freezing issues that we had in May with some of those early cold temperatures that came on. That's working well, and it's also obviously avoiding evaporation, so it's saving water for us. So it was a trial and error we got there, and obviously in these two snow events which we've had, July and August, we've been able to keep leaching, and the leach pad operation's been normal despite the storm and the snow and the freezing temperatures. So that's a positive for us that we've resolved that, and how we're going to operate the leach pad going forward in winter conditions. Just take a note of the snowfall here, because this was the first event. Later you'll see a photo of the leach pad after the recent event, and you'll be able to see the difference in the amount of snow that was deposited. That was our PLS pond during the first storm event in July. Obviously snow settling on the pond and freezing, and you can see the snow accumulated around the sides. Obviously the pond itself's not frozen, but just the top. We're talking temperatures of -24 that we were experiencing during that event.
And this has been a positive for our water balance, right?
Correct. So what we talked in the press release about the mineral coming from Phoenix South having higher humidity content than we expected. We planned on 1%, 1.5%, and that's coming back at 4%. So the amount of water required on the leach pad to saturate the material, so the solution percolates, is approximately 25% less than we expected. So that's been a positive. We've got more than enough water. We've never been water constrained in the project. And then additional to that, in the July event, with the snowfall that we received, we calculated that we received something like 13,000 cubic meters of water inflow from the leach pad to the PLS pond. So a positive from the snow events, and obviously from the second event we're going to have a lot more water than the first event. So something we can try and calculate and use in the future.
I guess what we'd like to say too is, because right while we were building this project and talking about trucking water, a lot of people were worried about our ability to truck water and provide water to this project. Water has never been a bottleneck for us. to date on this project. I mean, we've have a haulage contractor that's dealing with trucking the water, and things have been progressing really, really well.
Yeah. So yeah, a photo after the July event, once we'd re-established access to the plant. Obviously, the snow's there, and the biggest problem during the storm event was the visibility. So whiteout conditions with the snow being wind blown, you can't see. So we had to wait 4 or 5 days, and then we took 4 or 5 days to open everything up again and re-establish access. And you can just see that the snow that was accumulated on site, which you'll be able to compare to the August event in the later photos. Okay, so that's after the event, access to site on the left, the access road to the project, opening that up, and then the photo on the right is the mining access, so re-establishing access to Phoenix South on our main haul road. So it takes time. That's all. It's machinery and time to clear the snow and re-establish access. This is the second event, the August event. It's a shot from an app, and you can see that it was a major precipitation event that lasted 4 to 5 days. So much more precipitation. We've seen over 120 mils of precipitation on site in 2 days, which is sorry, it's 120 or so. 1.2, so it was almost 10 times, over 10 times the typical yearly precipitation. And then the impacts of that, not only on site, but also on the access road to the project. So this is the CH31, the international highway, which runs from Copiapó across to Argentina. Our access to site for water for all our consumables. And obviously below 3,000 meters, typically that precipitation on site, which is snow, turns to rain. So this is a rain event in the Atacama Desert. Again, sort of a 1 in 10 year event. And you can see some of the damage to the road, which has been re-established. We've fixed this since 2 or 3 days ago with Kinross. We were able, on Saturday, we were able to reopen. But just to give people a feeling, this is a crossing that's deliberately been designed for these sort of events to channel the water across the road. And you can see it's probably three meters deep of sediment that's been deposited in that crossing, which had to be removed and cleared. Just other damage to the road from water flows, surface flows. Obviously, it's a dry region, and when you get a lot of rain coming down, the water courses not that well established, and the water runs where it wants to run, and it's cut out the road in 2 or 3 places like this. Quickly fixed, just filled it in with material and put the grader over it, so it wasn't that big a deal to re-establish access, but again, it's time, and it'll be repaired properly in due course. So again, this is the August event. This photo on the left is the road from the mining camp, which we have at 20 kilometres at 3,200 metres. That's the snowfall arrived right down to there, went further downstream as well. So we had to open up the public road, and then the middle photo is our internal access to the project, and then the photo on the right is the ADR plant. So you can see the snow event is over a metre and a half in lots of places of snow accumulation. Same thing, arriving to the ADA plant, you can see again well over a metre of snow across the plant. The photo at the bottom right shows the containers that some of the offices are in at the moment, completely buried. So we had 30 people stayed up on site to keep the plant running during that period, and we established access back to them on Saturday to be able to relieve them and get fuel and other consumables back to the plant again. So there's a photo of our leach pad. If you can imagine the leach pad there, you saw in the other photo the black plastic covers were apparent. You can see them this time that you can't. They're on this big flat surface, sort of to the right of the centre, and that's the leach pad currently. So that's part of what we're dealing with now, is reopening these accesses to the leach pad, to the mining. There's a lot more snow than we saw previously in the July event. Moving on to Condestable quickly. Just a photo of the tailings filtration plant that's been in commissioning the last couple of months. It's operating now and it's about ready to go into full-time production. That probably by the end of this month we'll be ramping that up and dealing with all our tailings via the filtering process to dry stack. So that's happening. Geology at Condestable, the exploration program. So we've completed a surface mapping campaign all over what would potentially be the future open pit area. Geophysics across the whole concession package has been done, and geophysics combined with the field mapping will now lead into the design of a open pit drilling campaign. So we'll be drilling probably 5 to 10,000 meters over that surface potential area to help define the resource, and maybe leading towards a potential future open pit project in the medium to long term. Same again, the surface mapping. And then the other thing happening at Condestable is the ore sorting trial. This is a photo of the plant that we've purchased. It's not at Condestable yet. It arrives in October. So it's a referential photo of what the sort of sorting plant looks like. And we plan to install this in Q4 once the equipment's here. It's something similar to the photo. It'll be a small trial setup, industrial pilot trial, where we'll run approximately 1,500, 1,600 tonnes per day from waste stockpiles and low-grade stockpiles, and processing according to the flow chart you can see below, basically processing 1,600 tonnes per day to receive approximately 850 tonnes of processed mineral of enhanced grade. So we're looking at 0.4 material being improved to 0.65, maybe 0.7. And that trial will run for 6 to 9 months and enable us to make a decision. Is it really working as well as the lab results? Is it something that we can employ? And if it's successful, obviously we'll take it to an industrial scale and add in maybe 2 or 3 circuits and be able to produce a couple of thousand tonnes per day to help with the ramp up process to 12,000 tonnes per day. But yeah, it's early days. We'll run the trial and see how that goes. So that's the end of the photos.
Yeah, and hopefully that gives everybody a bit of an overview of where we're at. The weather event in Chile has been caused by a super El Nino, which is in place at the moment. It's an El Nino that most analysts are saying is the strongest in recorded history. Here in Lima, where we are, it's 5 to 7 degrees above normal temperatures in Lima for this time of the year. We had a rain event in Lima yesterday, which is unusual for this time of the year. Usually, if there is any rain in Lima, and the average rainfall here is 10 millimeters per annum, occurs in summer. So really weird stuff going on. But anyway, not ideal. If people were following us during last year when we were building the project, we had typical weather events, snow flurries, etc., which didn't stop construction. We constructed on time and on budget. So we've just hit a tough spot during ramp up, and obviously it's not ideal, but it is what it is, and we roll up our sleeves and get on with it and battle through it. So just to give you some idea of what we're dealing with. I've got some questions here that people have sent us, so maybe we'll just go through them. I won't, just for confidentiality, I won't mention the person's name, but I will ask the question and get our team to answer. In Condestable Q2, your highlights say $3.10 AISC, but your reconciliation table says US $1.81. Is the difference the Franco-Nevada stream, and which number should we model?
I'll take this one. Hi. So yes, the difference is the Franco-Nevada stream. I would model the higher number because that includes, I guess, the true cost of the ASIC.
Okay, next question. Once Phoenix reaches commercial production of steady state, 20,000 tons a day, what is currently the working assumption for forecast ASIC for a full year of operations? I mean, I might jump in there first before you do, Andrew. I think that's the whole part of ramp up, is to get to the nominal throughput and to do it consistently, and then to look at what the costs do look like. It's very hard to project. There's been diesel inflation in Chile. There's been labor inflation in Chile, and we need to come to grips with all that in our numbers. And obviously, once we get to a steady state, be able to project into 2027. So, Andrew, do you want to elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. During Q3, we would have liked to have been at 20,000 tons per day, and we would have started to really understand what our costs are with the new mining equipment that's arrived, for example. That's, the cost of that equipment's approximately half the ownership cost of the rental gear that we had. So there's going to be an impact from that. And unfortunately, we're just not at steady state production, so we won't see that yet. But I'd like to, hope September, October, once we're back in normal operations, we'll have a good idea on what that number probably looks like going into next year.
Okay, I'll move on to the next question. Phoenix stacked 19,325 contained ounces. Hang on, what happened to that? Yeah, okay. Contained ounces in Q2 and produced 9,088, 47%. What ultimate recovery does the feasibility study assume, and what are you seeing on the oldest cells of the pad?
Okay, so yeah, the feasibility study assumes 75%. That's what we're looking for. And what you're looking at there from Q2 is a product of a 90-day leach cycle. Material goes to the pad. We don't put it straight into leach. Sometimes we finish building a cell, and it's the different timeframes on material going to leach. You have percolation times, because the pad's now got in some places up to 3 10-meter lifts on it. So it's basically a 2 meter per day percolation time. So it's 15 days for solution to come down. We had some freezing issues too that we talked about in the press release in May, when we were trialing the plastic covers. We had some of the initial cells that weren't covered froze. So really, it's a question that I probably can't give you a good answer to just right now. I think by late this year we'll have much better feeling on how that's tracking.
Okay.
It's just too many variables here at the moment. Sorry.
A lot of balls in the air. Okay, next question. Do you expect the water consumption per ton of ore, 75% of design, to remain at that level? If so, could mine throughput be expanded as water was the bottleneck of the operation?
Yeah, that's basically how we're seeing it. I mean, we've come down 4 benches now in Phoenix South, and that humidity content at 4% in ground is maintaining. Obviously, we get 100 meters down, 200 meters down, it may change, but we can't guarantee that it stays at 4%, but logically it should. And if that's the case, that 25% difference in water required to saturate material would enable us to process an additional 25% of ore, assuming we maintain the same trucking level that was planned on, budgeted on. We can potentially process 25% more ore volume and with the same amount of water. So that's where we'd expect to go with that, ramping up into 20 to 25,000 tons per day during next year or late this year.
Okay. Next question. Probably about 1 to 1.5 years ago, the ASIC was forecasted to be about $12.50 US. But clearly, due to inflation and energy costs, it has to be higher nowadays. But I noticed that it was about 3,100 in Q1 2026, and it is a bit lower in Q2 at about 2,700. Where do you see ASIC stabilizing and going towards, and how long will it take to get there? Thank you very much.
Yeah, as we ramp up to 20,000 tonnes a day, steady state operations, I'd expect that to come down to around somewhere closer to $2,000. Obviously, the trucks that I mentioned, the rental equipment we had was expensive. There's a saving coming there, and the other saving, of course, is at 20 plus thousand tonnes per day will be the G&A, which is divided over more tonnes. That brings your cost down. So it's the operating efficiencies that we need to introduce with the mining fleet, and productivities will come down. But that's going to happen during Q4 now, probably, given the storm events that we're suffering from and the cleanup that's going on right now. So around 2,000 remains to be seen. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on. If you receive approval for EIA modification at Condestable this quarter, what do you expect a ramp up to 10,000 tonnes per day will look like, timing and work required?
Sounds like one for Mariano.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mariano, we need to hear from
sure.
Mariano.
So yes, there's as you say, we're still expecting to receive the EIA modification in the third quarter. There's going to have to be changes to the plant to expand to 10,000 and beyond. So we're expecting, changes to the crushing, milling, and flotation circuits. The longest lead time item of those is the procurement really of the mills. So if we start work, let's say at the end of the third quarter, that should put us in a position to start ramping up to the higher levels of throughput in the second half of 2028. Obviously, there is kind of the work at the plant, but also we need to do some work in terms of mine preparation as well in the underground, but that can obviously happen during the construction phase at the Condestable plant. So we would be expecting it in the second half of 2028.
Great. Okay. Next question. Is there a gold price where a crushing circuit at Phoenix would make sense to increase gold recovery from the current 75% estimate? I think I'll pipe in here. Obviously, we'll be looking at that as part of the potential expansion of the project, and looking at all options of whether we introduce crushing or we remain as run of mine, etc. But once again, the ramp up helps us with that because it gives us a lot of information that we can use in that study to determine what the optimal look of the project should be, given a potential expansion. So yeah, we'll have to see. And we've got ongoing, Andrew, column tests going on at Phoenix Gold in respect to material to help us with that, right?
Correct. So there's a metallurgy plan specifically designed to look at recovery by fragmentation by rock type, and basically to help us make that decision in the expansion, do we include a crushing circuit for some of the material or not. I mean, the question, it's not really gold price driven. I mean, it adds value putting a crusher in, but there's a lot of capital and OpEx expense and complication to a simple construction for us, and yeah, it didn't make sense to build a crushing circuit for 4 or 5 years at 20,000 tonnes a day, which then becomes obsolete with the expansion. So I mean, Alex mentioned our strategy was to define that and understand that during this initial 20,000 tonne per day stage one project, and make an informed decision with better information in the expansion case. Do we add crushing or not? I mean, yes, it adds value. It's not massive, but it does add value. Yep.
Okay, another interesting question. Why is it taking longer than expected to receive the desalination water info for the Phoenix expansion study? Mariano and Andrew.
I'll let Mariano start.
Sure. So just to put some context around this, we've been working with, potentially up to three suppliers of diesel water that are in the area. The initial engineering took a little bit longer for two of those, and those have been very close to being completed and in the process of being completed now. And we're in the process of receiving sort of fully loaded, if you want, tariff calculations from those parties. So we're in the process of that now. We're getting to that stage at this point. In one of the other suppliers we're still not there yet, but there's been a lot of progress really in the last couple of quarters relative to where we were before. So we're getting there. We're getting there. Andrew, maybe you want to give a little more color, but I'd say we certainly advanced quite a bit in the last couple of quarters.
Well, both of you guys are jumping on a plane today or tomorrow to go to Chile to talk to one of those guys.
That's correct. Yes.
I mean, the only thing I would say, yes, it's slow, it's painfully slow, and it's sort of a little bit out of our control, but we do have two real options on the table that Mariano was mentioning. We're getting to the point now where there's two very real options, and we're coming to a decision point where we need to choose one of those with obviously the information that we require to be able to make that decision. So it's come a long way in the last 3 to 4 months from where we have been.
Okay, another question for Catherine. On the Franco-Nevada stream at Condestable, how many of the gold and silver ounces have we already delivered? And when do you expect the step down from 63% to 37.5%?
So today we've delivered 49,000 ounces of gold and 1.5. And so phase three, so the step down should begin at sometime in 2030. So a ways to go before we get that step down.
In when? The step down in when?
In 2030.
Okay, 2030.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Okay, and it looks like I've got one last question here on the screen. Can you comment on the company's participation in the Royal Road offering? Is this project the third leg of Rio2's growth? Also, can you comment on next steps for the Calzas tungsten project? So I'll take these two questions. Royal Road, obviously, we acquired that block previously owned by Agnico Eagle. It was an opportunistic event that happened. We paid around 5 million Canadian for that block. Tim Coughlin, the CEO of Royal Road, is a great geologist, well known down here in LATAM. First mover, one of the first movers in Colombia with Anglo Ashanti back in the early 2000s. And he's active in Colombia, Saudi, and Morocco. And we looked at that and thought, well, we're never going to do that. We're never going to go into Saudi, Morocco, or Colombia to explore because we're not an exploration company. So we thought, it was an interesting opportunity and that we'd take it on. And is it a third leg? No, I mean, it gives us a view into those countries. We support Tim in what he's doing, and hopefully what he does is create value for shareholders in his activities, and we're one of those shareholders, and who knows what happens down the track. But it's a very passive existence. We do share ideas and other things about certain things, but yeah, it's just an opportunistic investment, and we'll see how that goes. In respect to tungsten and Calzas, we have dusted that project off. It was part of the original Prospector Resources, which was the entity that we took over and renamed Rio2 back in 2016. We decided not to let go of the asset, even though tungsten was, not very valuable at the time. Tungsten has become very valuable and strategic, and we thought, well, okay, let's dust that off and let's have a look at what we may have there. And we've started to do work on that. What is the ultimate aim with Calzas? Probably to do a spin out, right? Probably to, because it's not something that Rio2 wants to advance and on its own. Probably spin it out, give our existing shareholders a participation in a separate company, and that separate company goes off and advances the project. What we want to do, though, in the meantime, is do enough work on the project to create some value and to demonstrate that this could be a bulk tonnage, potentially mineable tungsten resource, and eventually a reserve. But we have to do the work. The good thing is, because of our experience, the first place we went to was the Selkirk First Nations to gain social license to advance the project. There was some legacy environmental issues that Selkirk identified that we weren't aware of because we've never been there, that we tidied up and we've cleaned up. In July, we had a task force go up there and clean up the mess that was left behind by previous operators. They really appreciated that. They gave us the permission to do additional work on the property. And we hope, depends on lots of things, but we hope that maybe by the end of the summer season in the Yukon, that we actually do a little bit of drilling, only about 2,000 odd meters or something like that, to just demonstrate that this prospect does have the potential to become a bulk tonnage deposit of tungsten. And so, yeah, let's see. But it's never going to be a core asset or a key asset of Rio2. It'll be spun out and it'll have its own life on its own. So that's the end of the questions. Hopefully, we've been able to address this. I mean, it's just a casual conversation opportunity. I don't know if there's any hands up, moderators. Do we have any hands up?
There are no hands at this time.
Okay, great. So, we'll do this again, make ourselves available to shareholders. I think we've had reasonable participation, and just be able to put ourselves in front of everybody and talk through some of the things that we're doing, some of the challenges we're facing, and where we're heading. So hopefully it's been a benefit to everybody, and thanks very much for your time.